This is my new model of a Victorian glasshouse. This one is actually modelled from elements of the glasshouse in Botanic Gardens in Belfast in this year. I mean, it's been maintained as a glasshouse, so some of the details come from that, the basic shape, although this one is actually much bigger. And this is a buildable structure, so it comprises two splines, one of which you can see here. This is the lower spline, as I call it, and here is the higher spline. This is the one with the curved semicircular roof and with the curved ends, and the lower spline you use a flat end, and you can see that there is a door, an end with a door here, a curved end with a door, or one of these lower end flat end doors. So what does it comprise? And it allows you to build all sorts of shapes that you want. Well, first of all, if we have a look up in the menu and just type in, it comes under my initials, SF, and then G, Glasshouse. Here we are, we can see. So there's various scenery items, static scenery items. And first of all, Glasshouse High Cross. Let's just put one of those in. And this is this component in the middle here. This is the crossing component from which you can take 4 splines out in each of the cardinal directions. And then we've got a couple of ends for the high end, so we've got a high end there, that's this piece here without the door, and then we've got the high end here with the door, and then we've got the 2 equivalents for the low end here, that's the one without the door, and then the next one down is the low end with the door. So they're pretty straightforward to do. And then if we look into the splines and we type Glasshouse, we've got Glasshouse High and Glasshouse Low. Glasshouse High is the spline for the high part of the glasshouse. There we are, pretty obvious. And you can probably guess what this one is. Glasshouse Low is the spline for this. Now, so I've made this up, just this example here. I've made it up with the cross piece, the two different high ends, the 2 different low ends, and the 2 different splines. And you can muck about with this and introduce several other variations. You can make a very large glasshouse. You can of course reduce the size of the glasshouse because it is buildable, so you can adjust the ends and reduce the amount of spline between the ends and the cross piece, and similarly here if you wanted to. And once you've got your basic glass house in, I put in a sort of a dirty ground colour texture. It's actually raised slightly above the ground level, just about 1 inch, and put in some cobbled paths. You can see the paths that go through around, go round across the ends. And I've also put in a few bits of foliage. So if you want to put in, let's try, do we have any? Yeah, we've got some palm trees, which is probably more likely than the maple or whatever it is. And all you do, all I've done is I've made sure I've got a palm tree that isn't too tall for the, there we are, there's a little palm tree. And let's move that into the glasshouse, and there it is. So now it's growing inside, and you can muck about with this, fill it up with lots of plants, foliage and shrubs. There's a spline of some shrubs there. Even if you want to, you can get the whole lot sorted out outside and then just group it all, move it as a group into the glasshouse, and you can fill up these as well. I've not put any shelves or other furniture inside the glasshouse, deliberately so, so that the so that the interior isn't all jammed up with stuff, and also to keep the poly count low. This uses quite a lot of textures, as you might imagine. There's all sorts of weird and wonderful textures for making the curved sections of the glass house, and indeed for, even if you look at the profile of this here, it's almost like a sort of a Arabic arch in its sort of curve here on the side. So it's quite complex. It was quite a complex model to make, although it doesn't look it. And of course, with all these pieces over here, what you can do is, for example, what we could do is, let's just go back to splines, come over to this one here and move it. We could reduce that a bit down to quite a small spline, length of spline, and we could just scroll up a bit here. Let's have Glasshouse low. Oh, that's still on the splines. What we want is Glasshouse. High cross. Let's put another crossing part here. Move it over a bit. Let's connect it up with a spline. And just move those over a bit. Just tighten them up a bit. They're quite short sections in the spline, so you should be able to be quite flexible. And let's move this low spline over to here. Just connect it up. Now, move it there. And let's just move these out of the way a moment. And give ourselves another spline here. And then we can add ends, we can add extra bits of spline here. And put in the high spline here. Just a bit of that. Let's move one of the high ends over. And of course what you have to do is connect the spline to the scenery item I discovered. But then you can adjust it. It doesn't take too much. So you see, you can start making any sort of shape you like, more or less. I mean, I know I've only done that one type of crossing. I did start making crossings for two of these low levels to come together, but it just became far too complicated. Even producing this crossing was really quite a difficult thing to do, because the way in which, if I zoom in on it, the way in which these panes here joined with these panes really was a pain. It really was difficult to do, to get the geometry looking right. But there we are. So there's a Victorian glass house that you can add to Trainz and make a real feature of it, make your own Botanic Gardens. The shadows look a bit odd. I don't think there's any way of getting around with that if you want to keep shadows turned on in Trainz, which I do. So there we are. There's a glass house, and if we go down to ground level, there we are, nicely translucent and transparent, rather translucent. You can see inside. Actually, if you go inside, you should be able to see from the inside out as well, because I had to model all of the interior glazing as well, and I've really simplified the arches that went round, but hopefully that's given you enough of an inspiration to add a Botanic Gardens to your layout. Very, very Victorian indeed, very 19th century. Have lots of palms and ferns and that sort of thing in it. That'll really really set the tone. So there we are. And of course, alongside this you need to have some sort of brick boiler house with a chimney tucked away behind some trees somewhere to keep the Botanic house, the glass house, nicely warm for these tropical specimens, which, if you're modelling a layout which is not which is in sort of like in Britain or something like that, then you can now add exotic palms and various other plants to your layout, carefully tended inside a lovely Victorian glass house. So there we are.